There we go. Okay, how's it going? Um, I wanted to put this video out as just kind of an introduction to the class materials. And by that I mean the last video was more of a, here is how the class is going to function. Here's kind of like how we're structuring things and assignments and all of that. Whereas this video, I wanted to kind of briefly talk about, what we're actually going to be doing and talking about and studying. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about research and rhetoric. Now, if you took 1303, you might be familiar with the term rhetoric and studied that a little bit. So this might be a review, but I wanted to, kind of touch on this a little bit more to help frame the class, help frame kind of what we're going to be doing and how to approach, writing. Um, so rhetoric, it's a field of study, has been around for about 2,500 years, and it studies language and symbols and how language can be used to induce cooperation. Um, One of the more famous definitions of rhetoric is all the available means of persuasion. Now, when we talk about persuasion, that means that we're not really talking about things that are objective, I guess. It means that we're interested in subjectivity or these things that are up for debate, right? So if you have something that's objective, it's a fact, you can't really argue about whether or not that thing is true, right? Facts are true. However, um, what we do with those facts, right, is very much up for debate. I'll give you an example. I could say something like, you know, Beethoven is a musician, right? That's true. He was that thing. However, if we were to say who is the greatest musician of all time, how do we answer a question like that? Right? There's no objective metric for determining who is a better musician than others, right? I mean, there's so many different ways that we can approach a question like that. Um, what makes a musician the greatest? Do we look at things like technical skill? Do we look at knowledge of music, popularity? Do we look at how they changed the world of music, right? Like maybe the effect they had on music, right? There's so many different ways to approach this question, and then we can divide the question up into like, okay, well, who's the best in the genre of rap, right? Or who's the best rock and roll artist or something, right? There's so many different aspects to a debate or a question like this that, this is where rhetoric comes into play. When there's not something that's an objective fact, right? Um, it's up to human beings to like kind of set the metrics for how we measure something like who's the greatest. Um, it's or any of these things that don't have an easy objective answer. That's kind of what rhetoric is used for. Um, other questions like this could be who's the who's the best basketball player of all time, right? I mean, you could argue Wilt Chamberlain, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. How do we determine between all these two? Michael Jordan, can't forget him, obviously. But there's so many different arguments to be made, and depending on how we value these different things, you might reach different conclusions, right? It's debatable. It's up for debate. And so once we have that as kind of our starting point, right? If that we agree that things can be, you know, um, can be argued different ways. Now, how do we make those arguments? How do we make good arguments, right? Um, I do want to point out that rhetoric is still useful when explaining objective facts. Sometimes difficult scientific concepts need to be explained in a way that convinces people they are true or that allows people to kind of grasp a very difficult concept. So, in some cases, scientists may use things like figurative language, like metaphor, simile, or comparisons, or other rhetorical techniques to explain these ideas. A good example of this was something like the Big Bang. This is a scientific concept of the creation of the universe, and it's it's a difficult concept because obviously you need a lot of scientific knowledge to understand how it works precisely. But they make it easier to grasp by calling it a Big Bang, right? It was an explosion and everything kind of moved outward, right? So even when you are in a field like a STEM field, right, where these things tend to deal more with things that are objective, rhetoric is still useful in these cases. Um, so don't think of it as just something that you need to use when you're in the humanities or the social sciences or whatever. It can be useful in STEM fields as well, especially if you're going to be writing papers and convincing people that your theory or experiment worked or whatever it is. Um, so next, I wanted to just kind of move on from that. So, a question I always like to start with is, what is good writing? What does that mean, right? Um, I'm sure many of you in taking this class, I know you have to take it, it's required, but in taking this class, you're probably hoping to improve your writing skills, right? To be a better writer. And I just want to stop us and have us think about that. Okay, well, what does that mean, right? What does it mean to be a good writer? What is good writing? And I would argue that there's no way to really, there is no objective good writing, right? This isn't an objective term. Language is very much constructed. It's something that we came up with, right? And so, good writing is what we as a society agree is good writing. And tastes can change from person to person or from community to community. Um, Writing is contextual, so when we say what is good writing, the answer is it depends. That's really the only way to answer that question. Now, what we can do is we can look at, okay, what does this community and view as good writing, right? So we can take the academic community, for example, and we can say, okay, well, what does the academic community usually value in good writing, right? Or we could take the business world, right? What does professional writing look like? We could split this up even further, right? I mean, what counts for good writing in a field like English might be very different from what counts as good writing in a field like math. They might have different goals, or they might have different like norms or conventions that the other field does not. And so it really just kind of depends. Now that doesn't mean that we can't practice and get better at writing. That just means that the way that we do it is we have to be aware of the situation that we're writing into. Okay? So even though the academic community prefers certain genres or styles over others, it's still rhetorical. Whether or not your writing is good depends on how well you navigate the rhetorical context. And the rhetorical context is the writer, the audience, the text, and the situation. So how all of these things kind of interact with each other determine what your writing is going to look like. So for example, when we talk about writing to different audiences, if you're writing an email to a professor, it might be a little more formal than a text message to your friend, right? I mean, that's just kind of how we adjust based on the different levels of professionality, or how close you are to a friend versus the the nature of the relationship between a professor and a student, right? How we approach writing in these cases it's different, right? You're going to have different goals, different ways you go about it. And so that's what I mean when I say that writing is rhetorical. It's recognizing the choices that you have available and making an informed decision based on what you're trying to do and who you're writing for. Okay. In this class, we will be writing arguments. This means you will be taking a debatable topic and writing to convince an audience of your perspective. You'll need to consider things like audience purpose and style to do this effectively. So again, being a good writer, obviously it takes practice, and there are things that you can learn and techniques and all that. But at the same time, you have to know when to use those techniques, right? When's the right time to make certain rhetorical moves. Okay. Now the other thing we're going to be focusing on is research. Um, Research is how we search for, find, analyze, and integrate information into our own writing. So this class is designed to help you practice the research process. Um, it's all about, you know, when you have a question, like if there's something that you want to find out, what do, right? Informally, right, you might do a Google search, right? Or you might look at Wikipedia, or you might ask other people. Um, you might watch a YouTube video on the topic, right? You might read a book, right? There's a lot of different things that you can do to find out more, to learn more about whatever it is that you want to know about. Um, when we talk about research in a university setting, right, for a classroom, you're doing the same things, just at a higher level, I guess, right? There are things that you have to consider, um, and so that's kind of what this class is gonna. That's kind of what we're gonna be doing in this class. I'm gonna try to give you a lot of practice doing these things, right? So not only are you going to be finding sources, right, knowing where to look for sources, how to analyze sources. So once you find an article or some kind of information on whatever it is that you're interested in, how do you know that's good information, right? How do you know that's something that's going to be useful to you, right? If you come across two articles that say different things, well, how do you figure out what you agree, or sorry, what you what's right out of those, right? Um, which one convinces you more? How do you know? So, and then after analyzing, how we take that information and then integrate it into our own writing. So, not just arguing from ignorance, but you're actually taking the ideas of others, you're taking this data that you found, and you are connecting it to your own ideas, and that's what writing is in the university setting, okay? Um, Research is important because you don't want to show, or sorry, because you want to show that your ideas aren't just coming from nowhere, right? It's not that you just had a thought and you put a thought on the page and that's the end of it, right? Which, especially at, when you're first learning to write at lower grade levels, that's kind of what writing is, right? They'll say, what do you think about this? You write it out and that's the end of it. But writing at this level is that's not going to cut it. You actually have to, consult other ideas, other perspectives, making sure that you're kind of testing your own ideas against the ideas of others and seeing if they hold up. Okay. I want to point out that academic writing doesn't happen in a vacuum. One of the points of academia is that people are arguing over truth and knowledge. I mean, that's kind of what academia is. It's a lot of people that are just arguing with each other over what's true, or what meaning is, right? I know I have this argument with some of my family members sometimes. They look from the outside in to the like universities or academia, and they think it's all like a monolith, right? That academia promotes certain things and that's the end of it, right? It's all, everybody agrees, and really, the further you go into academia, you realize that, like, no, people don't agree on a lot. I mean, they might agree on some things, but they're arguing over the details. That's how I kind of think of academia. It's one big argument. So for example, you're gonna read your textbook, right? Your Read, Reason, Write, and even though this is these are good things, not everybody in the field of English will agree with everything that's in this textbook, or will agree that this is the best way to approach writing, or that these are the things that you need to learn as a writing student. People are going to have different approaches. They're going to have different ideas, and even though they're all kind of based on similar things, there's a lot of variability here. And I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here. That's kind of what you're doing in a university setting. Is you're taking ideas and you're putting them up against other people's ideas, or you'll take someone's idea and you'll expand and do more with it. Um, and Yeah, it's one big argument. Um, so this is a metaphor from a scholar named Kenneth Burke, and this is kind of how he explains academic writing. So he says, imagine that you enter a parlor or any room. You come late. When you arrive, others have long preceded you, and they are engaged in a heated discussion, a discussion too heated for them to pause and tell you exactly what it is about. In fact, the discussion had already begun long before any of them got there, so that no one present is qualified to retrace for you all the steps that had gone before. You listen for a while until you decide that you hear or that you have caught the tenor of the argument. Then you put in your oar. Someone answers. You answer him. Another comes to your defense. Another aligns himself against you to either the embarrassment or gratification of your opponent, depending upon the quality of your ally's assistance. However, the discussion is interminable. The hour grows late, you must depart, and you do depart, with the discussion still vigorously in progress. This is a good way to kind of think about what academic writing is. People have been contributing to this conversation for, you know, centuries, basically, the whole, human existence. Um, I mentioned that rhetoric, this is, what I am studying, is a field that's, 2,500 years. It's had a lot of people kind of talk about it and offer ideas and challenge ideas. And, this kind of conversation, this argument has been going on for so many years. I'm just now getting to it. Now I'm starting to, add to this argument, and, I will be for, my career as a scholar. And, after I'm old and long done with this and pass away, this conversation will still be going. Knowledge will still be being created, arguments will be being made, but it's bigger than any of us, and it's again, this is just a constant argument. That's kind of how academic writing it can be characterized. Um, so anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting way to to think about this. Okay, last thing I want to talk about. I mentioned in my previous video that a lot of the, I guess, material is going to come from you. And what I mean by that is I want you to, find things to write about. It will be, through the textbook and through my assignments and lectures and whatnot. I'm going to be talking about like methods and techniques and that sort of thing. But as far as like the topic, you're going to have a lot of choice in what you write about. Okay. And so just kind of give a brief preview over our main assignments. Let's move me over here. That's better. So yeah, the first major writing project, this will be your first essay, is going to be an evaluation of a website. You'll select a website for a product, service, or organization connected to your field or projected profession and write a thesis-driven evaluative argument in which you examine the rhetorical strategies of the site. For example, if you're a pre-pharmacy major, you might select a website from a drug company. Yada, yada, yada. Each of these websites is making an argument. You should buy this, or you should shop here, or you should join us. The purpose of this essay is to evaluate how effectively your site persuades viewers or potential customers to do this or do that by analyzing and evaluating the rhetorical elements in the site. So again, basically, you get to pick what website you are analyzing. I would like this to be connected to your potential field or career, or what you're going to be studying in the future, because I would like this to be useful to you. That's why this first discussion board and journal, I'm kind of starting to ask you, what are you here studying? What are you interested in? I'm hoping that this will help you to kind of um, start getting an idea of what it is that you want to analyze and to write about. Um, our second research project or second writing project will be a research narrative slash annotated bibliography. What this will look like is you will pick a research question, and then you'll start to do research on that question. And through research, you're going to start to kind of narrow down what you think about the question, right? So your research narrative will kind of track how your topic changes over time, and your annotated bibliography will be 10 sources that you find for your research. And you will cite each source and then have a summary of each source. This is kind of designed to just kind of, get you doing the research project or the research paper. And for our final paper, it will be a research-based argument. So whereas in paper 2 you're exploring a research question, in paper 3 I actually want you to make an attempt at answering that research question, right? You're going to be taking a position, taking a stand, and then arguing for that position. Okay, you'll have to use the sources that you've collected to inform your position, right? So again, you're not just writing what you think, you are incorporating all these different arguments and all these other voices into your own perspective. Okay, and this is kind of the final exam of the class. So yeah, that's kind of just an overview. I will be sure to provide more in-depth prompts and instructions when the time comes, but I just kind of wanted to give you a quick overview of where we're going. Okay, that's about it for now. So like I said before, if you have any questions or if you want more information on any of this stuff, feel free to reach out. Either through email or through Blackboard. Like I said, I will try to answer as quickly as possible. But yeah, that's it. So see ya. Have a good week.